Morning, everyone. Good morning. Sorry, Kelly, I was a bit late then, wasn't I?
All right, I was only starting to panic just a tiny amount. I was thinking I
It's
pressed the wrong button somewhere.
like an initiation. Fancy a Facebook Live? You're on it on your own. See you
Ooh.
later. So I think we've got plenty of people watching. Oh yeah, we got quite a lot of comments actually.
Ah,
Morning, Monica. You are signed up by watching, so that's good. Monica's asking where she can sign up. I think that's what you mean. We're here now. Live in your living room or kitchen or wherever you are, toilet, bathroom. Um, Lucy says, I can't see you. Are you there? Yes, we are. We like to put a little holding screen on just so that everybody can join. Sarah is watching us from a wet and windy Southport. I love Southport. My nan used to live up there. She used to live in Wigan and spent many a lovely day on Southport Beach and Pier.
oh, lovely.
Morning,
Southport
Toops.
always sounds like
Sorry.
sorry. So I was going to say it always sounds like it ought not to be up north because it always confuses me. I have to remind myself that it's way up there.
Yeah, like Northampton is in the south. Well, to me, it's in the
Well,
south.
to you, I was going to say it's still
Yeah.
north to me. I think when you live down south, everywhere past London's north.
Yeah. Yeah. You're one of them. You're one of
I'm
them.
one
You're
of
a
them,
proper
yeah.
southerner. Proper
Yeah.
southerner. Tubes is watching us, our Emma, Tubby Johnston.
Hey.
Derby, which I know is miserable. It's so grey, isn't it? It's just ridiculous.
It's like, I'm sure last year or the year before, around about now, we were having some sort of heat wave. Like, what's going on?
Well, if you remember when we were in COVID, it was just like
Beautiful.
beautiful from start to finish, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Morning, Scotty. You were chatting to me last night, so I'm glad you're on this morning. And morning, Terry. So we've got lots of comments coming in, but I'll make a start because I know people get irritated when I just start saying hello to everyone. So if you are watching, do say hello. Let us know where you're watching from. Sometimes there are like clusters of areas, which shows us that perhaps there might be a problem because if all is going well, you don't tend to follow us. Um, I'm here this morning. Normally I'm on my own, but I'm with my lovely colleague Kelly this morning. And we're going to be talking about the send parent journey because I know a lot of teachers, I work really hard, as Kelly knows, to sit on the fence as best I can and be this sort of unbiased professional. But I am a send parent first and foremost, and I do get my back up quite a lot. And so I'm here from a parent point of view, but we're balancing it out with a professional point of view, because Kelly, well, we're going to talk about what Kelly's background is in a second because all will become clear. And I think that we're going to be discussing something that not many people know this morning. So there's like a big secret that we're going to reveal.
Yeah.
Anyway, how are you, Kelly?
I'm good. I'm delighted to be here this morning. This is it's a completely different morning for me actually than my usual working day. So it's an absolute joy to come and have a chat with you, Chrissa, and share our thoughts with lots and lots of people in the comments. I can see we've got loads of comments. It's really great.
Yeah.
I do a lot of webinars, obviously, for Sunshine support, and one of my favourite things is being able to connect with so many people that ordinarily, I wouldn't be able to. I work with my lovely families, but it's so nice to just have a little reminder that we can reach so many people on this platform because, gosh, we
Yeah.
need to, don't we, with the system as it is.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, one of the reasons I set Sunshine up was that there wasn't anything. I felt like I was on my own. And obviously, my story, and I'll talk a little bit about that this morning, but everything is so lonely. You feel so alienated. You feel so different. Um, you daren't declare what you're actually going through because you just think this is so weird. Nobody's going to get it.
Mm.
Um, and what I think is lovely now is that there are so many different support groups, so many advocates, all making their views and their voices and everybody else's voices amplified on these platforms. I just wish I had that. I would have felt so much more confident knowing that this is not just happening to me. This is a thing that happens. And, I don't know whether you watched it. The Mr. Bates versus the post office.
Oh, yeah, everyone was raving about that.
Well, each individual person that was reporting problems back to the post office, they were told, you're the only person who's reporting this, even
Mm,
though they had loads of different people reporting it. And I think as send parents, that's how we feel, that the
yeah.
system goes, you're asking for what? You weirdo. There's only you in the entire country that's asking for that. And
Mm,
actually, it's not just you. There are hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, how many people are on a send? How many kids are on a send register? It's massive. So I think it's really important that we understand that, our cases aren't unique. We get contacted quite a lot, and people say, "Oh, I'd like to share my story." It's really unusual. And I remember feeling like that. But actually, when you see the cases come through, they all have a very similar theme. Some get more complex than others. Um, but sadly, it's a pandemic. It's
mm,
this pandemic of injustice, and it's just
yeah.
awful. We're really keen to hear your stories this morning. So anybody who wants to share their stories, remember this is a public platform, so you don't have to. I know a lot of you come onto Facebook under different names, so you might feel more comfortable. But if you want to share a little bit about your story, or if you've got any questions for us, we're here for it. We've got people from all around the country this morning, Kelly. We've got Sandra from West Oxford, Claire from Stockport, Sarah from Southampton. That's more your neck of the woods, isn't it? I mean, it's still quite far, but um, Hayley from Bedfordshire, Belinda from Cheltenham, Lindsay from Shropshire, Paula from Essex. I feel like I always feel a bit like Cilla Black doing this. I won't do the accent. I won't do the accent.
I'd love
Um,
to hear your attempt at that accent. That would be very special.
you know, I'm from South Wales, as you know. I've lived in Derbyshire for most of my life, but I still consider myself Welsh, obviously. Born and raised really till the age of what, 14, 15 in Wales. But Tom, my husband, will always say that when I get a little bit cross, angry, or excited, I come out as a Liverpudlian. And I've only ever been there once. It's the complete opposite end of the country to me. Anyway, but nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Um, but I'll get started anyway. So continue to keep sharing your comments and stories. There are so many people to watching, which is just fantastic. Now, for those watching, then you may have seen me before on these videos. Some of you might have just seen me ranting and raving about certain topics, but you might know that I am quite a seasoned send parent myself. I've been a parent for almost 22 years. And I just simply don't look old enough. I know, I know. It's the ring light. But no, I set up Sunshine Support because of my own experience. And it was really the first experience that I had with EHCPs was absolutely appalling. Um, so traumatizing. Um, and what you might not know as a viewer today is sort of, you might not know what happened in the process, which I'll go through in a second. Um, but it's when you get to the other side and you get to the place where the thing that you've been fighting for, people seem to think that that's it. It's like, oh, all the anxiety will go, all the trauma will go, justice is served, everybody's happy, blissful. And it's not. It's not. There is no justice. Just because you've won a tribunal doesn't mean there's justice, because there is so many years of hurt, pain, and trauma to unravel. And that's if you recognize it. But it doesn't just happen by itself. You have to work really hard at it. And what happens is you land in the lap of a bunch of professionals who are not seeing who you really are. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Now, just briefly, my story is really lengthy, but I'm going to try and get through it in just a couple of minutes. I for my first child who has special educational needs, I submitted an EHC needs assessment request using the form. This is way before Sunshine Support was
Oh
ever.
no.
Oh yes, I used the form that the local authority sent me, and I sat there for days, in fact, probably weeks, because I've got ADHD. So I keep having this sort of task paralysis and then hyperfocus and then task paralysis and then hyperfocus. So it would have taken me weeks. And I filled in this form, and everybody around us, even though we had a team around the family meeting very, very frequently, my daughter was struggling to attend a mainstream school. She had all her diagnoses and everything. And I submitted this form. And it contained, looking back, all the information that it's meant to contain, which is basically, how do you feel as a parent and what are your child's strengths? Which is not designed to assess that legal test of whether your child may have SEN and may need SEN provision. So I submitted this form and we got knocked back 5 times. It went to panel, went to panel, went to panel 5 times, and he kept saying no to assess. And that was so blooming frustrating because I thought that, my child is now almost out of school completely. She's struggling so much with her emotional health and her mental health. Super, super intelligent. There was never a problem with intelligence, reading from a very young age, talking in full sentences, complete guessed out language processor, which I did not know anything about back then, from a very young age. I mean, talking 20 months having really complex conversations. Now I know she probably didn't understand most of it, but she could say the words. Um, Super, super intelligent, and that's all they would focus on is, oh, she's in the top, however, percentage of the school. She's coming out with, she's predicted grade A star or level 9 or whatever. Um, and so it was refused 5 times. And in the end, I was getting really, really frustrated. And I had an autistic advocate, and he put me in touch with a solicitor and, paid a costly amount for a letter. And surprise, surprise, they accepted the request. And I kept saying it was just because they had a logo at the top. But I now know actually what they wrote and requested was very legally focused. And Kelly, when you're writing an EHC needs assessment request, it's not just, here are all the problems this child has. That's not what you're
No,
talking about.
no, absolutely not. You have to be the way that you put that across. I like to think of it as I have a concept called so what. So everything that I write down about something that my child struggles with, I then try to think about so what? So what does that mean for their life chances and life choices? So what does that mean for the support they need? So what does that mean in terms of risk? And when we're talking about risk, we're talking about things like not just like what you'd normally think of as risk, as in would they run into the road sort of risk, but the risk to their progress, the risk to their mental health. So yeah, it's definitely not just a big list of all these things that the young person struggles with at all. And also you don't have to know what they need either. You're not the expert. You're a send parent who's probably at the beginning of a journey that until now, it's completely unfamiliar to you. Yeah, uh, you don't have to predict what people might
No,
need. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, that probably leads me on to the next point in my journey, and the fact that we got the assessment, she was issued the plan, and our local mainstream was named. Now I went into this kind of going, I know what school she needs, and this is the school that I want, and it's a specialist independent school that's local. And they literally were attacking me at every level because I showed my cards too early, but also exactly what you've just said. How on earth would I have known?
Well, yeah.
How would I have known that that's the school that she needed when she hadn't had any of her assessments yet? Yes, we'd had a very comprehensive neurodevelopmental assessment, which was 20, 30 pages in length and had loads of speech and language stuff in there. Fantastic. But that was only a very small part of what was to come. And I was so naive, and I really sort of went in very like a bull in a china shop, and I felt like I just annoyed everyone. And one of the things I think that we do really well here at Sunshine, it's something that I always talk about on these videos, is how and when to spend your energy.
Mm.
Because I think so many of us are so triggered by this no and slam the, the slam doors in our faces, that instead of kind of going, is this a battle I need to fight, or shall we regroup, so to speak, and work out our plan of action? And I just couldn't do that. I just felt like I was on attack all the time.
And as
Um,
well, it was interesting what you just said there about how do you know it's the right school. Um,
mm,
so you people watching, you may or may not be familiar with the concept of something called the local offer, which is what the local authority are duty bound to publish on their websites in terms of what they offer to you as a send parent to support you. So it's things like a list of schools and different alternative provisions and that sort of thing. But it's really important to note that the local offer doesn't include everything that's out there, because it may not include, because it doesn't have to, things like independent provisions. And you may find yourself in a situation where the local authority is asking you to pick a school. You know, you've got this magic EHC plan that you've fought tooth and nail to get, and you've gone through the process of trying to make sure it's all specified and quantified, and you think that that's it. You think, okay, I've done this now. Now the local authority are going to tell me what my child needs. But no, they ask you what you want for your child, and you think, well, I don't know all the schools in the world. I don't know whether that school's the right school. How am I meant to know? Even if I went and looked around it, how do
yeah.
I be able to do everything on the page? And you know, a lot of things out there, which are like independent special provisions, for example, you may not even know that they're there. Even places where you live, you drive past places like that every day and you never know they're there. So I used to be head of an independent residential and day education provision. So it had a children's home attached and a school. So I was head of the school part. It looked like a beautiful manor house. It looked
Mhm.
like, you know,
A
some,
rich person's house.
yeah, some country landed gentry lived there or something. You'd never know it was a
Yeah.
school. It's great for our kids because often they came to us through great periods of school attendance difficulties. So they didn't want it to feel like a school.
Yeah.
I think one child came and said, gosh, this is like Hogwarts.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Totally get that.
it
Totally get that.
corridors and things. So you wouldn't know it was a school. And if you are a new parent to the send journey, you don't know that there are schools out there that don't have corridors, for example. And such a small thing can make a massive difference, right? To a child's
Huge.
ability to think, is this a place where I can feel like I've got my tribe? It's interesting as well at the beginning when you were saying that you felt so alone. One of the first things we say to parents whose children are perhaps newly diagnosed, or they're they've been through burnout through masking and they're just sort of coming out and trying to find an identity, we tell people, we've got to find a tribe for your
Yeah.
child. But that is so true for parents as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, every bit of focus is on the child. Let's go. There's a youth club. There's this going on. There's that going on. Meanwhile, you take your child to that youth club. I remember it really well. There was a youth club for autistic teens, and I took her, and it wasn't long enough for me to go home, if you know what I mean. So I had to just go to a local coffee shop, and I would just sit there thinking about, worrying actually about what she was up to, because she struggled so much. So actually, it was not a relief or respite for me, nor was it supportive. And I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, because it was a wonderful club.
Mm.
But it didn't benefit me, and it didn't give me any kind of strength. It actually probably gave me more stress.
You
Um,
need to have that time. You need to have, you know, you need to feel less alone.
yeah.
And when you're going through those really, really stressful times, and particularly, if there's siblings in the mix as well, and you're feeling as a parent really torn because you're like, I need to look after my send child, I need
Mhm.
to nurture their siblings, I need to be everything to everybody. Gosh, energy drain to the max, just
Yeah.
that. But then, also then trying to access a world to try to get the right thing for everybody. So you have to have like your parent head, but also professional head,
Yeah.
and you're expected to know everything. When do you find time for yourself as a parent in that?
And I don't know whether you do. And it's one of the things I always bang on about, is having self-care, because so many people roll their eyes when I say it's really important that you practice self-care. As you know, Kelly, once my justice had been served and my child went to the specialist school that she needed to be at, I ended up having a stroke. And that was years and years and years of trauma and holding things together. And, I had three children under three and an autistic teenager who was really struggling with hormones and the changes and everything. It was hell. It was hell. I don't know how I'm standing today. Um, but I'll go back to the process because I think it's really important. So many people come to us, particularly around this time of year, where they're panicking that they've been named a mainstream school or a special or some kind of school on their EHCP that their child is expected to go to in September or even in the next 5 weeks, following the final plan. Um, and it's a real panic because on mine, after the EHC needs assessment was done and the plan was issued, our local mainstream was named, where she hadn't attended at this point for up to about a year. So we went to tribunal. We challenged sections B, F, and I, and the LA didn't turn up to the first tribunal. Well, they sent one case officer who had forgotten to instruct everyone else. So they sat
Mm.
there on their panel completely empty. Now, if that was a parent, they would have been told that they have to go ahead. But because it was a local authority, the tribunal was adjourned. I'd
Mm.
paid £8,000 for my specialist to be there that day. And so I lost all that money.
Mm.
And it was really, really heartbreaking. But anyway, months later, we headed to a second tribunal and we won all the content. So all the speech and language, sensory processing, mental health provision, all of that was locked into education, which is fantastic because back then there was no national trial, there was no social care legally binding and health legally binding stuff. So it all had to be in education, all had to be funded by education. However, I'd interviewed, as you know, Kelly, I'd interviewed more than 40 schools around the country because I wanted to have a good idea of what was out there. I was a recruiter by trade, so to speak, so I really did like interviewing people. So I just chose to interview a bunch of schools, and there were quite a lot of schools who were very salesy, and I didn't like that vibe because I felt like my child had a number on their head, which sadly in this area of work. That's what it's all about. The local authorities don't want the numbers, and the
Yeah.
independent schools love the numbers. So sadly, that is the way of the world. But I interviewed more than 40 schools. I dwindled it all the way down. I went to see quite a few. Went to see an amazing school that was only 38 weeks. And I thought, oh, with it being this far away, it might need to be 52 weeks. I don't know. Anyway, we found a school. It was absolutely amazing. I took my daughter there. She had her assessment there. She spent a whole day there. And she's not a big talker. She's a very good talker, but she isn't a big talker, not like me. And on the way back, it was 4 hours away, sadly. On the way back, she did nothing but talk. Oh my God, I've met the most amazing people. Everybody is so normal. I feel like everybody else. This is somewhere that I can just go and feel normal. I don't stand out, Mum. I don't stand out. This is just amazing. And I met my best friend. I've got a best friend. And I said, what's her name? I don't know, but she's my best friend, and it's absolutely amazing. And the teachers were amazing, and it doesn't look like school, and it doesn't feel like school. There aren't any corridors. That's exactly what she said. All this classrooms feed out onto a courtyard. It doesn't feel like school. You can even learn at your kitchen table, and the houses are amazing. Mum, I want to go. I want to go. It's like I'm going to university early. That's what she thought, and she was what, 13, 14, or 14. And it was a massive, massive thing for me as a parent because this school is 4 hours away. I'm sorry if I get emotional. Oh, I can feel it coming back. I had to admit that I couldn't meet her needs at home. And that's
Mm.
massive for a parent. When you give birth to your child and you plan to have a child, or whether you plan or don't plan to have a child, when you have a child, whether that's you birth the child or you are adopt the child or foster the child, there is some kind of romantic vision, isn't there, where you kind of go, I'm just going to love you forever. And I'm going to meet all of your needs and I'm going to raise you as a mini me. And this is just going to be wonderful. And that's how it should be. That's how you should be seeing this. But there is this a massively harsh realization for a lot of parents that that person that your child needs is not you.
Mm.
And it's really damn hard. It's really, really hard, which is why I knew that this was going to be the case. The professionals were all saying this is a residential, it has to be residential. The curriculum that she needs in terms of sensory processing, support, speech and language, everything needs to be embedded. You know, your child is not going to be able to attend a session for sensory, like a sensory diet session. It needs to be embedded throughout the day. Same with speech and language. He's not going to sit there in a room and socialize with people because that's just not who she is. This support needs to be embedded throughout the day. And a lot of what she needs is not necessarily in the classroom. We can see that she's really bright. Actually, it's a lot of stuff outside of the classroom. Um, and she absolutely loved this school. So we obviously went to this second tribunal, but they said, we love the idea of the school, but there's got to be one closer. So we won everything except for the name of the school. And it was absolutely heartbreaking. I came home, delivered the news. Well, it came, we were just talking about this. Some tribunals' outcomes tend to come within 2 weeks. Mine was 5 weeks on this one. It was just hell. Those 5 weeks were just hell. And when I got the outcome, she was so disappointed. She absolutely hit the roof, and she really deteriorated very, very quickly. She ended up hospitalized with her mental health. But while she was in hospital, I was working really hard at her bedside till early hours of the morning with my solicitor, to take the local authority to the High Court because they were really neglecting her needs. It's a very, very, very long story, a very expensive story, but the short version is that we won and she got that school of choice. However, we were told that even though she went there straight away and she arrived, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I won't dwell on it because I will get emotional, which I don't want to do today. However, after being there for a little while, we got told, hang on a minute, this school is not named on the plan on the EHCP. You have to go back to the tribunal to get the school named on the plan. And so we went back to the tribunal for a third time, having to take a load of professionals again, another load of cost. And that last tribunal, they made us work for it. And I thought, do they hate me? I don't understand. This is locked in. This is definitely the provision she needs. But I was supported by an absolutely brilliant team, even though I was absolutely on my knees. I had a brilliant solicitor, the most fantastic independent social worker in the country, Kathy Long. She's absolutely amazing. A tremendous psychiatrist who I don't think is doing any work now. I think he's retired, Dr. Soppit, who's just amazing because he is like the
Yeah.
OG of all the stuff that we see today about PDA and trauma. And then, of course, the head of an amazing the school that my daughter was at, who was just simply the most tenacious person I'd ever met. They would throw her a question, and she was just like, "Right, we are going to answer this." And I can remember the conversation she had with the school. She's like, "Okay, we need to just nip out the room, go back to our meeting room, sort this out." And I was like amazed, just sat there, like looking around the room, thinking, "How well supported are we? How lucky is my daughter right now?" And even though it was one of those, you're always nervous about the tribunal outcome because you have no idea. They could have just pulled it all away from her. However, they ordered a 52-week waking day provision, all paid for by education. So it wasn't a bit of social care, a bit of health. It was all paid for by education. And I thank that head teacher for making that possible, which is why we are working together now. And that head teacher is Kelly. Here she is.
It's crazy. We were reflecting on this the other day, weren't we? And saying, gosh, all the way back then, who'd have thought that here we are now? And
Crazy.
so I left my wonderful school, which I love dearly with all of my heart, in the middle of COVID actually, because I really crazily decided to have two babies across like 2.5 years. Sort of did my career backwards. I waited until I was like 38 to start having babies, and then just had two of them at once. And then unfortunately, I realised very quickly after my first baby that I just couldn't go back to being a residential head because I would often respond to calls in the middle of the night, or I'd go in and the commute was quite long. So it's over an hour's drive. So I'd often have to go in very early in the morning or in the middle of the night. And you just can't do that with Little. So so here I am. And it is an incredible thing actually, because my whole adult life, I have been a teacher. When I was a child, I would pretend to be a teacher. I knew my destiny in life was to help young people, and particularly young people who have struggles. And that's due to, you know, things that I witnessed and went through when I was younger. So I, you know, always wanted, I had a very fixed sort of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get to university. I'm going to be a teacher. So leaving teaching and leaving my beautiful special school was really hard. But I'm actually, you know, doing almost a better thing now, because I can support with so many families across the whole country to find that transformative outcome for themselves. Because I cannot exaggerate this, you know, the impact that you see when you work in a provision for young people with special needs, or even indeed mainstream. So my career was mainstream right up until 2011. So I started teaching in 2005, mainstream till 2011, then special needs thereafter. But when you work somewhere that genuinely facilitates really good outcomes for its youngsters, particularly those youngsters with additional needs or complexities, the transformative effect is like a ripple. It starts with the child, and then it ripples out to the family, to siblings, to parents, to grandparents, because everyone feels just so much more regulated. They found their place, they found their tribe. And what Chrissa was describing is an incredible thing for a parent to go through, to admit, you know, oh, their needs might be better met in a different place. But that different place isn't just anywhere. That's the thing to really hone in on. You're not just saying, oh, my child can just go off anywhere because things are a bit hard. Actually, what you're doing is you're putting yourself, your own needs and your own feelings aside to find a place for your child where all the adults are trained and experienced in using the same collective vocabulary, the same collective approaches. We are also emotionally detached, of course, so that we can, you know, we can hold firm boundaries, but also be incredibly inclusive and send friendly. And that sort of environment where there's that level of consistency, where that young person just feels like, hey, I know what's going on with me every day. And hey, I can learn to do things like wash my clothes and cook meals for myself, but in the environment that's real, like in an actual home, not just in a food tech room or something like that. All of that combined then makes that child go, oh my goodness. And it's really interesting because lots of parents would come around our school and they'd make comments like, I'm surprised this school is so expensive because all the children here seem to be very regulated, and you don't seem to have like lots of challenging behaviours and things. And my response to that is always that that's because this school is specialist. It's because all of the staff, we use the same approaches, we have consistency, we have really good systems. Everybody across the whole waking day, from when the moment that child gets up in the morning to when they go to bed at night, everything is an experience of learning, but in a way that isn't, you know, necessarily obvious. So that child is just comfortable, secure, and learning all the time around people that they look at and go, hey, they're like me. So yeah, it did seem quite calm a lot of the time, but that's because, you know, the old analogy of the duck on water, underneath all the staff are the feet.
Yeah.
Paddling and paddling and paddling. And that's why, you know, it was, as Chris was saying, she had to go through a lot of tribunals to get her daughter to a school like that. It's not the cheapest school in the world, by any stretch of the imagination, but the effect was transformative. And so many of our youngsters went on to do things in life that otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do. So we had, you know, pupils going to Cambridge, and you sort of think, gosh, you know, even any university, anything that's right for that child on their flight path of progress, we've got to find what they want to do and help them get there, you know. And I miss it terribly, but I'm so glad I'm with Sunshine Support, because one of the main things I do with families is tribunals to get their children into schools like that. And because of my background, I know sort of the things to say and what to do and how to write the grounds of appeal and then how to argue things and what to sort of obtain in terms of evidence. Because I know that when that family gets that result and goes off, and I don't necessarily talk to them again, I know what they'll be experiencing. Oh, it's just amazing. So yeah, I'm so thrilled, Chrissa, that we met all those years ago. What is it, like 7 years ago now?
2017. So yeah.
Coming up for 7 years, it would be.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, if I'm completely honest, and I hope that I'm right here because I think I'm right. Um, when I met you, I was a complete mess. I'm gonna describe a few things actually
I
because
know what you're going to say.
I knew you at the school and I dealt with one of your colleagues, Andrew, quite a lot. Um, and then when I met you properly was at our tribunal, but I didn't instantly recognize you because I was so stressed out. So when you said, "Is it Chrissa?" I remember thinking, "Oh, just off. You're such a local authority person who's coming to unnerve me before I go in the room." Because I saw you at a lanyard, but I couldn't see you close enough to see what the lanyard said. And I said, "Yes." Like, and who are you? Um, you were like, "Oh, it's Kelly, Kelly." You were Miss Mackay then, so Kelly Mackay from Sevens, and I said, "Oh, oh," and then all of a sudden my guard came down because I didn't have any beef with the school, so we were all good. But I remember feeling it was never. I never felt that my defense, that this sort of defensive way of operating, it was never towards the school,
Mm.
but I'm pretty confident that I was an enormous traumatized mess when I came to you that doesn't look anything like the person I am now. And I remember at every annual review, every termly review, because we would do loads of reviews at this school to make sure that everything, it was never left to fester. Everything was kept on top of. And as soon as I walk into the room, you'd say, "Chrissa, coffee, here's your tissues." So there would be a coffee, biscuit, tissues, because I would literally sit there like this, good, bad, indifferent. I was just traumatized. I had tears here all the time because I couldn't cope. Because I'd do my 4 hour drive down, and all I'd be thinking was, "I hope she's okay. I hope she's going to meet me okay. I hope that she's feeling okay, and that we can have some interactions this time about my daughter, not about Kelly." And that would be weird. And all of that pent up stuff would happen. Then I'd come down and I'd be quite tense because there'd be a meeting or something. Then we'd go out for dinner and I'd be quite tense, thinking, "I hope she gets back in the
Daughter,
car."
not me.
Oh, yeah, not you. Yeah, my daughter. And I'd be thinking, would she get back in the car to go back to school? And everything was just tense, just so tense. And I was exhausted by the end of my 48 hours there. And I would drive back and I would cry all the way back. I'd ring my husband and he would be ready. This is going to be a 4 hour cry fest from
Mm.
Chrissa. And it wasn't that I was upset that she was there. In fact, it was more upsetting, I guess, in some ways, that I didn't have anything anymore to keep me in that what I call the parasympathetic, the sympathetic state, which is where you're in a state of chaos and you've got cortisol going and you're right, heightened and annoyed. I didn't have anything to keep me there because everything was being handled and needs were being met at the school. But the local authority was still trying to pull her out, weren't they? Every meeting they were trying to slip something in. I remember I would take my solicitor to every meeting, and this one particular time, an independent reviewing officer from our council was there, and she said, "He's not allowed in the room," about the solicitor. And I said, "Why?" She said, "Because this isn't a place for legal people." And I said, "If you guys, i.e., the local authority, are in the room and I'm in the room, then he will be in the room because I don't trust you."
Mm.
And they said, "No, no, because you're unnerving the school." And they turned to you, Kelly, and they said, "Kelly, is having him there unnerving you?" And you went, "No." And they were like, "Oh, well, we don't think it's a place for it." Now, I managed to get him to stay in the room because in the end we just said, "Right, well, he's replacing my husband today. He is
Mm.
my friend." And he sat in the room, and what they tried to do was undo what the court had ordered 2 or 3 weeks before. And it's quite interesting to see how underhanded they'll be and how much we trust those people as parents. We trust they're going to do something lawful and ethical. And I have been witness firsthand to them breaking the law. And the sad thing is, because of the type of law that it is, it's not that they've gone to a shop and stolen something, therefore they're arrested on the spot. This is a type of law where we as parents have to then pay to make them accountable.
Yeah.
It's just bonkers. But the whole thing, I didn't trust anyone. So when I arrived with you, I was just a heightened, traumatized mess. So, and I'm sure that I wasn't the only one, by the way. I know that you, and I'm neurodivergent as well, which I didn't know at the time. So talk to me, talk to us today, and any professionals watching. What do you do with a parent like me?
Oh, do you know the first thing, and I say this on a lot of my webinars, when we're talking about, because I do a lot of webinars on PDA, which pathological demand avoidant presentation of ASD, uh, which some schools really do struggle with, because the approach you need to that sort of presentation of ASD is quite different to the sort of more classic ASD presentation that most people might stereotypically think of. So I deal with quite a lot of schools who are perhaps a little bit resistant to doing things in a different way. Now, what I always say in this context is we have a duty as teachers, as professionals, to empathize and understand where our parents are coming from on their SEND journeys. So we have to think every single time we have an interaction with a parent, whether it's on the phone, on an email, face to face, we have to behave like that is our very first interaction of our whole day, and we are incredibly pleased to be having it and incredibly well prepared to have it. Because let's face it, teachers are very overstretched. Senkos in particular often have a teaching commitment as well as being a Senko, so are constantly pulled in lots of different directions, and they are likely to see upwards of 10 to 15 parents a day, either on the phone or email or whatever. And what we're in danger of doing sometimes is responding too quickly, too flippantly, and we don't then give it a second thought. We just say, "Oh no, no, it's fine. She'll be all right. She'll be all right." And then she's crying. It's all right. Just you go, you go. We'll take it. Right, quick, on to the next thing. And that little quick interaction might be normal for us, but it's the only interaction that that parent might have with anyone from school from that day. So we move on very quickly. The parent will think, this is my one interaction, and I'm not really entirely confident with how that interaction has gone. And then if you feel like that, then you go home and you worry and you think. And then if you're having that every single day or every interaction you're having with the school, what then builds up is a just generalized sense of anxiety as to what's going on. And then that presents itself in different ways. And then sometimes the school can get a bit defensive about that. And then all of a sudden we've got this perfect storm that brews of a fracturing relationship. And what I think is that there is this responsibility that we have as educators. We have infinite patience for littlies. We just do. You know, we will make every reasonable adjustment. We will include, we will spend hours, I've done it myself, making PowerPoints of lessons to do with a child's special interest in a way to hook them in. Like, I'm an English teacher by trade, and I have encountered over my many years of teaching quite a lot of difficulty with teaching an autistic person English literature unless their special interest is reading, in which case it's like a dream for any teacher.
Yeah.
But otherwise it can be quite hard, and I've got to try and find a way to unlock that. So I know I spend hours doing that, and we have that for children. But where I think we sort of fall down sometimes as teachers is we forget that adults are just grown-up children, particularly neurodivergent adults who may not know they're neurodivergent. They're just grown-up versions of children. You know, you don't get cured of things. You don't suddenly have these things not apply to you or not impact you anymore. So we need to treat people with the same care, empathy, patience that we would with their children, because they're humans. We all deserve to be treated with respect and fairly. And the problem is, of course, is where teachers and the system in particular is incredibly overstretched. And there's an enormous amount of pressure on teachers to do so much. You know, if they worked in a supermarket, you go to your supermarket, you do your work at the supermarket, and then you go home from the supermarket. The supermarket wouldn't email you in the evening or call you up or expect you to call up the supermarket in the evening and spend your time like problem solving things to do with the supermarket when you don't work there. But all of these things are expected of teachers all of the time. So it's leading to teacher burnout. And then you get burnt out teachers flippantly talking to burnt out parents, and everyone's in this burnt out cycle. So there has to be, well, there has to be radical change. We know this. You only have to look online at campaigns and, you know, the problems with some of the decisions that governments over the years have made. There has to be radical change, and that has to be centralised change. But we have to, on a day-to-day basis, when we're dealing with parents, when we've got that energy accounting, when we've got our battery of like, this is how much energy we've got in the day, we need to try to make a conscious effort to spend some of our energy when it comes to parent relationships in a really, really efficient way. I would rather spend my energy there and sort of use it less elsewhere, so that my parents feel completely confident, supported, well communicated with, because ultimately that's going to solve me a lot of problems down the line and actually result in less work for me. I know that sounds sort of a bit awful, but it is true.
Yeah, but that work comes from the sadly the stressed out parent. And I know I'm still friends with people, other parents from the school, from your old school. And everybody, we used to say collectively, we had this little WhatsApp, well, it was a Facebook Messenger group, and it would always be, I've got a bit of a problem at school. I'm just going to go straight to Miss Mackay. She'll sort it out straight away. People knew they came to you, so it probably looked like, oh my God, I'm just bombarded all the time. But it was closed down really quickly because you efficiently dealt with it. There wasn't this constant sort of, oh, we'll meet and talk about this. Let me put something in the diary. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, a parent has to chase. When is the meeting going to be? Oh, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. There was none of that. And so actually, I think that particularly with traumatized parents, which by the time they get to, in fact, it's not even by the time they get to a specialist school. I've got a workshop, a webinar on the Sunshine Academy that's all about this. When a parent goes to a teacher and talks about something SEN related, and it might not be a diagnostic thing, it might be, my child is struggling a bit with friendships, or my child is struggling at lunchtime, or my child is struggling with something. That takes a lot of energy, a lot of courage to admit that number one, something's gone wrong with your child. Number two, you have to speak to a teacher over it. So having that first interaction sets the sort of bar, I guess, for the rest of them. If the parent is then sort of listened to, because that's all they want to be listened to. If a teacher said to me, I am really struggling to understand your child's presentation, that is quite nice. I like the fact that they're being honest with me. What I would like to come next in that conversation is, shall we learn together?
Yeah.
There is this genuine, so many parents are happy to offer that knowledge. I know I'm always happy to offer that knowledge. I recently offered that knowledge and got told it was a conflict of interest. I don't understand how me explaining my child and how to get the best out of their education is a conflict of interest. It's really quite frustrating as a parent because actually that 20-minute meeting that seems like an absolute drag. Oh God, I've got to meet with that parent because that's what we're named. That parent. I've got to meet with that parent to discuss their child because apparently they're more important than everybody else in my class. No, give that 20 minutes. That 20 minutes will absolutely help that mum or dad to feel calmer because they've been listened to. But also, you've just got 20 minutes of training. But that 20 minutes of training equates to probably hours of clinical training because you've been really specifically trained in that child. And I think it is that listening to. I remember having to raise a complaint at the school that you were at, nothing to do with education. It was actually to do with one member of the care staff. And I thought, oh God, here we go. I've raised a complaint before, not at the school, somewhere else, but nobody's going to listen to me. You said to me, when are you next down? And I said, well, it's this weekend. Great, I'll hang around. So you weren't working because it was a weekend, but you said to me, I'll see you on Saturday when you're here. Don't worry, whatever time you get here, I'll be here. Just ask for me and we'll have a chat. And you brought in all the relevant people, sat me down. We went through everything. You validated me and said, that must have been really concerning for you, particularly as you're so far away. We're in charge, here. let me work on this. By the time you leave, I'm going to get a solution. And absolutely sure as hell, I went away, did my usual thing, went out for dinner with my daughter, did all those sorts of things. By the time I'd come back that day, you said, "Can I have a quick chat?" That was it, done. It was all you said, "Do you want to escalate to the next stage?" I said, "No, there's no need for me to escalate to the next stage." Within a couple of hours, it had all been sorted. Now, yes, that's annoying for you because you would have had to have come in on your day off, which definitely you wouldn't be able to do now because and that's what you were saying. But
Mm.
what was lovely was that, yes, you had to come in on your day off, but that saved you from weeks and weeks of hell of me nagging at you, but also saved me from a lot of trauma and stress.
That's
So,
it. You can't live your life constantly under the sort of shadow of stress.
no,
And if we can do even small things like doing something like on the day off is quite a big thing, and there'd be no part of me as a teacher boss that would advocate any of my staff underneath me doing that. But I think once you reach a certain level of like management in that sort of context, it sort of comes with the territory a little bit. But I'd certainly never say to any of my teachers do that. But there are small things that can be done. You know, something very basic, like if you've told a parent you're going to email them by a particular time, just email them by that particular time.
yeah,
And because that's in your control, you know, you're the one who said to the parent, I will email you by date X. Just make sure date X is a date that you will be able to email them by. Don't say, I'll email you by tomorrow, if actually in reality that's not going to happen, because all that does then is make the parent feel let down by somebody else. So there are little things that can be done which help that parent feel like they are the priority they deserve to be. And it is, you know, every child is important and special, but some we have to be completely transparent. Is that some families have a more difficult journey than others, and therefore some families need a slightly different approach to others. It's equity, isn't it? It's not like everyone needs exactly the same treatment, because that would be ridiculous. You know, we don't all wear the same size shoe, so we don't ram our feet into the same shoe, do we? So it's the same sort of thing. You know, we need an equity of approach that understands that some families just need a little bit extra or a little bit different, just like our send children in a school.
absolutely.
That is ultimately what's going to get the best outcomes.
And I won't go into this in huge detail because if anybody wants to watch this, we did do a Facebook Live a little while ago about the generational curses that happen. And I think a lot of, I want to bring it into this because quite often, and I've seen it firsthand, sadly, whereby I was actually quizzing. I was brought in to help a school improve their attendance, and I quizzed a head teacher on why have these two children got 0% attendance. I'm just quite interested. Do we know the reasons behind it? And the response was, oh, their parents were the same because the parents came here.
No.
And so those parents, yeah, that are clearly got send or unmet needs, because that's what we need to look at it. We see some parents as well on our Facebook page that will say, the reason my child can't attend school is because of emotional, whatever, whatever. Not like these other kids who are truant. No, no. There'll be a reason for them as well. We need to stop saying there's like a good and bad. We just need to be looking at core reasons because I think so many times as a society we write people off, we write parents off as fellow parents as well. I've seen it, I've heard it. Oh, she's only gone and got her kid diagnosed to get the DLA. Have you seen how hard it is to get DLA?
So
And
hard.
how difficult it is to get a diagnosis? It's just ridiculous. I'm going to come to the comments a little bit because I'm aware of the time. Um, Tanya says, why can't mainstream schools have the same empathy?
Oh, um, do you know, I think it's a mixture of factors. I think it's that there is I cannot underestimate the level of pressure and stress that teachers are under. And it's about finding the time in the day, because there's so many additional teacher stresses that parents aren't even aware that teachers are put under. You know, there's constant demands on teachers' information and time from leaders, because there are demands on leaders to provide that information out. So it all just gets cascaded down. And the average teacher trying to fit everything into their day, it's really, really hard. And this is why I'm saying that teachers have to try to really tell themselves at the beginning of every interaction, imagine this is your only interaction of the day, now have the interaction, because that is the difference that will mean a lot to a parent,
Yeah.
but that shouldn't have too much of an impact on the teacher's general workload. Because it's about, you know, trying to, you may not have all the answers. If a parent comes in with their child and is like, hey, they're really distressed every morning, it's taking me 2 hours to get them ready for school, they're screaming, I don't know what to do. You have two choices. You say, oh, right, okay, well, come on, Johnny, you're all right when you get in. Come on, come on, come on, we gotta go, gotta go. Come on, Johnny, you'll be fine when you get in. Let's go and play that game. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Bye, parent, bye, mum. You can either do that, or you can go, gosh, that must have been a really hard morning. We don't see it here, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Completely believe you. I've just
Yeah.
got to sort this class out. Please know that this is an issue that we need to have a conversation about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an email by tomorrow afternoon and we'll have a proper conversation about it. But for now, please know that we'll do everything we can to regulate Johnny. That was exactly the same length of
Yeah.
both of those situations,
Yeah.
but one felt very, very different to the other. A
Yeah.
teacher's never going to have all the answers. It's about, I don't know what to do, but I believe you, it's happening. I have this thing about a dripping bucket, right? Everyone's heard of the Coke bottle analogy. When a child is really fizzy all day, they hold it all in and then they explode at home. Everyone's heard that. A parent the other day on one of our Facebook Sunshine Academy Ask Me Anythings was saying she never wants to hear that analogy again in her life. And I'm like, I totally respect and hear that. Like, that is a very overused analogy. I have a slightly different one, which is a bucket. Now, we all know about a filling bucket that sloshes around. And if you carry a filled up bucket with you every day as a child, filled up of all the difficult things you do, and it goes up and up and up, it splashes around. And at home, because it's full, it spills. But the difference in this analogy that is really key is that we're all responsible for the drops.
Yeah.
So throughout the day, school is responsible for the drops that go into that bucket. If they don't see it spill, does that mean it doesn't spill? Absolutely not. It totally does. And because the buckets went in during the drips went into the bucket during the day, we're all collectively responsible. So if you are somebody who is struggling to get that level of empathy from a school, then perhaps sharing those two examples of, you can respond to me in two ways that take exactly the same amount of time. I would prefer it if your communication had the tone of the second way. And also, we're all contributing to the droplets. We're the only ones seeing it spill at home. Does that mean it doesn't spill? No, it doesn't. Please, can you understand that? I'm not expecting you to have all the magic answers, but just at least believe me when I say it's spilling, because it's logical, isn't it? And that would be what I'd probably try and put across to the school when
Yeah.
to get that level of empathy a little bit more developed.
And I think it's less effort as well, you know, from the teacher's point of view. That's sort of like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Let's go in, let's go in, let's go in. That takes more effort,
Just
more energy than doing what you said. I once had a head teacher for one of my kids. And one of my children has got a developmental language disorder, as you know, Kelly. And not many people have heard of it, even though it's the most common learning difficulty. And up to probably 3 children in every class of 30 has DLD with a diagnosis or not. So we're always encouraging teachers to sort of spot your three sort of thing. There will be 2 or 3 kids in each class. And they will present in a certain way. Now, when I met this particular head teacher, he was great, really bubbly, really welcoming, very visible. Just somebody who I thought oozed confidence in what he actually did, because you could approach him and he'd go, if he didn't have the answer, which he didn't. When I met him, I said, oh, my child has got DLD. She's coming into the school. And he's like, wow, not heard of DLD. Can we learn about that together? And I was like, yes, we can. You've just admitted that you're not perfect and then said, this is what we're going to do as an action point. That took seconds and it made the world of difference to me. And he learned about it and he put things into place that cost absolutely zero in terms of cash, but made a huge difference to my child. And oh my goodness, how amazing. So him as a leader, I found then that the teachers were equally as sort of empathetic. We'd come across the odd thing because you do, that's just normal, that's life. But do you think it always sort of comes down to the leadership of the organization or school as well?
Yeah, I think culturally it absolutely does, because it starts from the top and filters down. And ultimately, if you're a teacher who's incredibly heightened and stressed anyway, to the point where it's not allowing you to be as empathetic or as supportive or as responsive to your parent cohort as you know that they need, then you sort of have to then cycle back a little bit and look at, okay, so what's the workload like? What's the school's culture like in terms of what it expects of its teachers outside of that? And then things like policies, which we as advocates always say, you know, if you've got a problem with how something is dealt with, go back to the policy. What does the policy say? And school
Yes.
policy comes from the governance board and the head teachers. So if you're thinking about things like communication, I've dealt with so many different schools. I've dealt with schools who are really, really open in how they allow parents to communicate, but also put in place clear and reasonable expectations for how
Mm.
parents should expect staff to communicate back with them. Because the answer is not, you know, expect staff to email parents all the live long day, including all night long and all of this, because the staff can't cope. It's just unreasonable. But what is useful is an expectation of communication which satisfies all parties and stops that teacher becoming overworked. The other end of that is when you get schools who are incredibly rigid and enforce communication protocols on people, like you can only email one person, and because you made a nuisance of yourself, so you can only email this one member of staff, and this one member of staff, you know, might be on leave or might be away or might have a problem with their emails, or you might have an issue that is nothing to do with that member of staff, but in ordinary circumstances you just go to the other person, but you've been banned from that because you know you're evil, so you now have to just email this one person. And it actually not only causing stress, but it procedurally it then becomes really hard, because if that person's away, you don't get an answer, and then you think, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Do I email someone else? But I'm not allowed. Ugh. And then you know you've got that other end, very restrictive communication. So yes, it does start with leadership. It starts with a culture of inclusion that is child and family led and not school/reputation led. I say this very fondly because I am a teacher. That's my disclaimer. But there are a lot of egos in teaching. And there are a lot of quirky personalities in teaching, because teachers are all human beings.
Yeah.
And when you come into teaching, you do so because you generally have quite a passionate feeling about making a difference and doing something meaningful. So you're quite passionate about how you do things in your job. So then when somebody comes along and says, this doesn't quite work for me, I'd quite like you to do it differently, you're naturally going to feel defensive because you're trying your hardest, and then someone's saying that that's not working for them, and then you're like, oh gosh, well that can't be the problem. And then it becomes quite hard to process. And what we need to remember, particularly as school leaders, that it's not about us, it's not about our ego, it's certainly not about telling everyone that the school is outstanding and therefore must be the perfect school for your child. This is one that I see a lot. The school might be outstanding. I am not calling that into question for a second as an advocate coming into the situation. I'm not here to tell a head teacher how to run their school. What I'm here to do is make sure the provision in the plan that is specified and quantified is delivered. And if the jigsaw piece is not right for that child, like if it might be an outstanding school, but if it's not the right setting fundamentally for that young person, then it's my duty to push back and challenge that, because it shouldn't be about the head teacher being like, but I think the school is great and therefore we can meet everyone's needs. Actually, there's something to be said for saying, hey, we're probably not the right setting for your child and we want your child to flourish. So we'll support you in trying to find a different setting. No
And you
ego.
know, I think coming back to that sort of ego thing, a lot of one of my closest friends is a teacher and has been a teacher now for 20 something years, which makes us feel very, very old. And one of the things that I noticed from the conversations that we have is that her autonomy is to be taken away over those 20 years. When she came into it, she could be and she loved it. She would blend all of her work into the next subject. The kids didn't realize they'd moved on. The kids didn't realize they were learning. They were having such amazing fun, and her outcomes were fantastic. And she met them where they were, and she's always been the most wonderfully inclusive teacher. And what I want to say as well, because I am very, very close to her, she's almost like a sister to me, um, is that actually her wings have been clipped more and more and more. So when people are coming to her with these problems, it's not that she doesn't want to help, it's that she's not allowed to.
Yeah,
And I think
but
that, again, that trickles down, doesn't it? But I think it's really important that we get that.
I've had to
We're,
say to some of my parents, I've been told I can't talk to you.
yeah. Oh, it makes me really uncomfortable because that's not inclusive.
No, it's not.
That's
And it
inclusive.
also it genders this incredible sense of mistrust.
Mhm.
Who's told you you can't talk to me? We live on the same road in the same estate. Does that mean you can't say hi to me in the street? You know,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. No, it's like,
Nobody's happy in that scenario.
no,
Nobody's comfortable or confident. We have got uh we've got quite a lot of comments. However, the team have been on it and they're actually responding to a lot of people. But I'm going to go to a comment that hasn't got a response. Rachel said, I'm really struggling with this talk. We've been fighting for 7 years, never got the right support. Now we have a completely broken, traumatized child who is out of school, no education. All the talk of lawyers, etc., when I can't afford that is disheartening. That's why we're here, Rachel, because actually, I probably should have made it very clear. I spent an absolute fortune, and by the way, didn't have the cash, so borrowed, didn't steal from anybody, but I would have. Um, and we fought our case. However, that is going to be imprinted on my life for the rest of my life, I think, financially. But the reason I set Sunshine up is because that's not normal. Why should we have a send parent tax? Why should we have to? It frustrates me that because I've got kids, I've got loads of kids of my own, and some of them have send and some of them don't. And for the ones that don't, things are blissful. I don't have to learn about anything really other than being a mum. And
mm,
I am, you know, just her mum. And that's quite lovely. But for some of my other children, I have to be their advocate, their solicitor, their psychiatrist, their emotional support coach. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of that falls into motherhood. But when you're learning about the law, which is incredibly complex, and for some of us, not accessible. I know that because I've got ADHD, I like to skim read. You can't skim read the law. You have to be able to look at it in detail. So I get it. I'm honestly, my fight was about 8 years of battle before we got to where we needed to be. And it made me so blooming sad that we had to pay a fortune to get that support in place. However, that's why at Sunshine Support we have our free cuppa and chats where you will have advice from people there. They're in person or they're online. They're all free. Emma runs them. Emma has got all of her qualifications. She can advise you. She's absolutely phenomenal. We have our free phone calls. We have our a Sunshine Academy, which is 9.99 a month, which, you know, for some is nothing really. But you can cancel at any time. But there are Ask Me Anything events. So Kelly's just mentioned this, where basically a bunch of people get together on the Sunshine Academy. There's an advocate or two in the room, and they answer all your questions. So this is, you know, almost free advice. 9.99 just for that alone is worth it. Um, and we've got all our webinars as well. The Sunshine Academy has hundreds of webinars on it. So for 9.99, you can watch them all and then unsubscribe if you wanted to. So the what we're offering is far more accessible than anything I was ever party to. Because what I noticed was all the free advice came with strings attached. All the free advice wasn't particularly forthcoming when I needed them to be. All the free advice was actually attached to my local council and they were all making decisions together. So I don't
really
trust. I don't.
well take you through each step either. Whereas on the Sunshine Academy, we have specific courses which will actually tell you, you know, if you're doing an EHC needs assessment application, this is how you do it. We've got webinars on there from a legal perspective about how you handle appeals and tribunals, so that if you can't afford a lawyer, you can learn how to do it. So I support families as an advocate, and families have said to me, "Oh, do you think we need a lawyer?" And I've said, "Well, honestly, probably not, because your case is, when you apply the law, your case is very, very clear, actually. And
Yes.
all you need is a little bit of help to set out for the tribunal where the law applies, and then just let the sort of evidence do its thing." And then parents have come back and said, "My goodness, you know, I was quoted a lawyer for £300 an hour, but you've helped me for like 3 hours and at a significantly reduced,
Yeah.
not £300 an hour."
No.
And they've managed to then not just be able to go forward and say, "Hey, this is our evidence and this is why it stands up," to a great success. But it's like the old adage of teach a person to fish, isn't it? You know,
Yes.
we are empowering people by
Yeah.
giving knowledge to do this. So we're not
And
saying
also,
we're going to do everything for you at all. We're saying, hey, here's some information that will let you do
yes.
this for yourself.
And you don't have to scour the internet.
Yeah,
You know, people will often say to me, "Oh, but that internet, that information is free if you go on the internet." Yeah, absolutely, and it will cost you in your own time trying to find the bits that you need, or we will just deliver the bits you need. But I was going to say something and I can't remember what it was now. Oh, the mudslinging,
slow.
local. No, the mudslinging that local authorities do. They sort of send you off the scent, so you know this is the law, this is the way I'm going, and then they just throw something like they did with me. "We don't think you're a very good parent. You're making it up." What? So all of a sudden, my attention went to that and left the EHCP process. And I think one of the things that the webinars help you to do is stay on track. Forget what they say and just ignore them. Just stay on track.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to read one last comment because it's there in public, so I can read it. This is from somebody you know. So it's a fellow parent from the school, the amazing
Oh,
school.
hello, whoever you are.
Gina Sefton.
Oh, hi.
So Gina says, "Hi, Kelly. As you know, two of my children went on the specialist journey with you at the school you worked at. My eldest Finn has done so well and is studying now at mainstream college on a level 3 course with no support, which is amazing."
Oh my God.
I've been a bit teary.
Oh, don't. I actually am a bit teary. I thought the world of those boys.
Oh no, here we go. Look, she's going, she's going.
Why didn't
Um,
you warn me?
Gina, you've got
Why
us
didn't
both.
you warn
But
me? My
Huey,
goodness
however, is
me.
having so there's a different story for Huey, sadly. Huey, however, is having a very different journey at specialist. It
Oh,
hasn't been so positive and the fit hasn't been the best, but soon to start a specialist college.
oh,
So fingers crossed for Huey. And also, Gina, you know where we are because you're on my Facebook as well. We're dry robe. I was going to say the word then. We're dry robe people, aren't we? Yes, the
dry
people
road
that
buddies. Dry road buddies.
buddies, buddies. Wasn't going to use the rude word.
Yeah.
Um, get in touch. Just let me know if you want to chat, because actually, I'm sure that we can arrange something to see if there's anything additional that's missed or anything that we can help with.
Yeah.
But
Sorry
Gina
about
will
that
support
emotional. That
you.
was a real surprise. When I
Oh, I'm sorry,
left my
but I'm not
school,
sorry.
I left by not returning after maternity leave, so I never got to say the goodbyes I really wanted to say. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock. Chrissa, I am described by somebody the other day as a praying mantis. Okay, so like I'm a praying mantis. I'm not an emotional, sad, crying lady. How dare you expose me?
Well, it's nice that it's not just me. There we go. There's your box of tissues, Kelly. There we are. That I can do it for you now. Um, but there's lots and lots of messages. So anybody who's still watching, we have answered a lot of questions in the chat. So if you might find there's a whole bunch of support there that you didn't know about. Just to let everybody know before we leave today, because we're going to have to bring it to a close. We could carry on for hours. But this week's webinar, which is tonight, is actually sold out. So that's with Dr. Ross Green, which sold out quite quickly, actually. We have to keep
So excited.
adding.
I'm doing that one tonight with Dr.
Oh,
Green.
yes, you are doing that. We've got disordered eating and eating disorders. That's next week. That's a really, really good one, actually, if you've got children who are struggling to eat. Again, if you want any of the links for these, please do just comment and we'll send them to you. Another really good one, which I think is perfect given what we've just discussed, actually, is how to build your own resilience and self-esteem as a parent or carer. That's on the 23rd of April. It's with Shadell Cook. Shadell is a trainee psychotherapist, but in an area that's very, very advanced. So she's far higher than most psychotherapists and counselors, even though she's deemed a trainee. She's incredibly gentle. She has lived experience. She's got the most beautiful accent. And so you will literally melt into that webinar and come out really empowered. She's just wonderful. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, and of course, then we've got the last one of the month, which is the 25th of this month, is reducing exam-based anxiety. Again, I mean, this is obviously for children or young people. If you want more information on that, just comment and we'll send you the link. But Kelly, thank you. It's been emotional. It's been emotional. I can say
Oh,
that now on
yeah.
both sides.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Tina got
Thank
me.
you, Chrissa, for having me on this morning to have a chat about all of this. It's something I feel really passionately about, because I really feel like teachers need sort of support in understanding that things are really tough, but equally we do have a duty as professionals to be there for parents and be there more consistently and robustly. So it's a matter very close to my heart, and I was really glad to talk about it with you today.
Good. Well, I'm sure we'll be back again soon. There'll be another Facebook Live in 2 weeks. I can't remember the topic, but every other Tuesday at 9:30, we're here. Um, well, Kelly, have a good webinar tonight. I'm sure I'll talk to you throughout the day. Thank
Cool.
you so much, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.